Before Martin Snell discovered the crime scene, he was on his way to Lesser Springburn to deliver milk. He pointed his milk float towards Celandine Cottage, a 15th-century weaver's workplace and home that stood behind a ragstone wall on a slight rise of land. At the bottom of the drive, he parked and adjusted the rear-view mirror so that he could study his reflection. Gabriella Patton. The very thought of her made him sigh. Gabriella. With the sleep still clouding her cornflower eyes, and her tousled hair shining like wheat in the sun. Gabriella, Gabriella. He loved the sound of it. Satisfied that he looked his best, Martin rustled in the float to find the pint of milk he always kept coldest. He pushed through the drive's gate. He noticed that it was off the latch, and he said, "Gate, gate, gate," just above a whisper to remind himself to mention it to her. He lifted the top of the milk box and started to place his delivery inside. He frowned. Something wasn't right. Yesterday's milk hadn't been fetched. The bottle was warm. Well, he thought at first, she's a flighty one. She's gone off somewhere without leaving a note about her milk. He picked up yesterday's bottle and tucked it under his arm. He'd stopped delivering until he heard from her again. He started back towards the gate, but then he remembered. The gate. Off the latch, he thought, and he felt a flutter of trepidation. Slowly, he retraced his steps. He stood in front of the latticework gate to the garden. Her newspapers hadn't been fetched either, he saw. Yesterday's and today's. And when he squinted at the front door with its iron slot for the post, he saw a small triangle of white resting against the weathered oak, and he thought, she's not fetched the post either. Well, she must be gone. But the curtains were opened at the windows, which didn't seem practical or wise if she'd taken off. He looked over his shoulder at the garage. One of the doors stood open a good 3 inches. Martin saw a glimmer of chrome as the light struck the green Aston Martin that he'd seen her spinning along the lanes in. If the car was here, and she was here, then why had she not taken in her milk? It wouldn't hurt to check, Martin thought. He took the newspapers, pushed open the gate, made his way along the path, reached for the bell pull, and heard its jangle just inside the door. He waited for the sound of her footsteps, or her voice calling out. But none of that happened. Perhaps he thought she was in the kitchen, where, perhaps again, she couldn't hear the bell. It would be wise to check. He did so, going round to thump on the back door. No answer. To the right of the door, a casement window looked into the kitchen. Martin couldn't see anything beyond the closed door to the dining room and had to climb through a flower bed to get to one of the dining room windows. Doing his best not to trample the violets, he gained the glass. Inside, everything seemed normal upon first glance. Then Martin tightened his fingers against the windowsill. "Oh, Gabriella! Miss! Miss!" A chair stood at an angle at the foot of the stairs. One corner of it abutted the wall, which was stained black from smoke. Smoke that had risen in the shape of a tornado that blackened the curtains, blackened the wall. Smoke that left its mark on the stairway as it was sucked upwards towards the bedroom where even now Miss Gabriella, Miss Sweet Gabriella. Within the hour, Detective Inspector Isabel Ardery, arson investigator, would know 3 things. 1. The fire had been started with a primitive incendiary device consisting of a cigarette and half a dozen wooden matches. 2. The person in bed upstairs had been asphyxiated when the fire in the chair had sucked all the oxygen out of the house. And 3. The corpse in the bed was not Miss Gabriella Patton,